Hey folks, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And hey, I am super excited to do this video today because this game we're looking at is awesome. I love it, and that is the Dungenerator, Die in a Dungeon. And this is a solo or two-player co-op dungeon crawl. It has deck building, it has hero building, it has dungeon diving, it has some tower defense. It has so much. There is so much game packed in this little kind of magnet snap box case here, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's like one layer of variety away from being an all-time small box classic. And throughout this video, I'm going to suggest some ways that I think they could add just a little small one deck expansion to really elevate this game to be something absolutely amazing. But even as it is, I think this game is pretty dang great. I backed this on Kickstarter, and I backed it mainly for the art. And I didn't really think too much about the game. I just thought it looked cool, and it has totally surprised me. This is awesome. So in this game, it's a solo or cooperative dungeon crawl with two players, one or two players. You will bolster, protect, and rebuild, explore an infinite inky dungeons, slaughter and be slaughtered, grow more powerful with each session. It is a small campaign. It's kind of a 6-game campaign, but it's a very simple campaign. The game plays relatively quickly. It has drop-in, drop-out co-op. So yeah, just so much is packed in this box. And the best way to show it is probably just to kind of set it up, go through the different decks, and then we'll play a couple of sample turns. So in the box, you will get a little rule book. And I think the rule book is fine. It gets the job done. In this game, you will be playing as each player will be a party of heroes. And the heroes are designated by different dice here. And so each player will take a number of dice. We have our D4 is our outlaw. We have our D6 is our scout. The D8 is our mercenary. The D10 is our archmage. The D12 is a war priest, and the D20 is a berserker. And so the dice value, the value showing is kind of the strength, the power of that character. And as you can imagine, on the lower value dice, the D4 and the D6, when you are searching, when you are looking for loot, when you are trying to be sneaky, the lower value dice have a better chance because with those actions, you are trying to roll low. And when you're in combat, the higher value dice have better potential because you are trying to roll high. It's a very, very neat system. I think the combination of deck building, hero building, and village building, along with the dice system in this game, is pretty cool. Another thing that I really do like is how the game is set up. And so we have these quick setup cards, and they walk you through the entire step of setting up the game. You go through A, B, C, and D. And as you do each one, you will then flip that over. And that quick startup card becomes a building in your village. And these different buildings will have different abilities and different things that you can use while you have heroes in the village. So we have our temple here, and this is where we can resurrect dead characters. And when characters die, they go into the cemetery. And characters will die quite frequently in this game. We also have a tavern, and when you take a tavern action, you can discard cards in your hand in order to cycle cards from your draw deck. And then we have the town hall, and if you do the town hall action, you can draw a hero quest. And these are quests that you can discover and you can attempt to overcome. And as you overcome the quest, then those become new actions that you add to your action deck. And so this is one of the main ways that you are deck building and the main ways that you are hero building. Now, in addition to these 4 village cards, these starting village cards, we also have a whole deck of various village quests. And at the beginning of each game, you will draw randomly 2 cards from this deck. And those will be 2 different quests that you can try to attempt during a game. And when you attempt one, you flip it over, and that becomes a brand new building that you add to your deck. And so your deck, your village space, your village deck is a permanent deck that you are constantly adding to as you complete these village quests from one game to the next. And each one of these has a different ability, a new action that you can take so you can have some kind of meta progression from one game to the next. We have a mine, a merchant, a junkyard, a carpenter, an arena, a map maker, a bank, a hideout, a smithy, and a chemist. Now this is one area with these quests and the hero quest where I feel like the game could use some more variety. And with just one kind of small deck expansion, I think it would be pretty easy to vastly improve an already great game. Because all of these village quests, they all have to do with combat. And so you're just trying to kill a certain number of enemies and adding them to these cards when they are out in order to unlock that new building. I would love to see more variety in the different types of quests. You know, maybe some different dice mini games where you're playing maybe a little Yahtzee mini game, keeping some, discarding others. Maybe a little stacking game, or just something else to do, something else to add some variety to the quests that you know is above and beyond just simply killing monsters, because killing monsters a lot is fun, but it also gets a little boring. And so each of the players will also have an action deck. So when you're playing with 2 players, you will pass both of these out. With 1 player, you will just pass 1 out. And your beginning deck has 10 cards in it. And so you will be adding cards to this deck from the loot deck and from the gear deck and from your hero quest, unlocking new skills for your heroes. And so your initial deck here, whoops, that was mixed in there. Your initial deck has 6 different move cards. All of the cards in this game are double-sided. And when you first start your campaign, everything needs to be placed so the sun side is up, sunny side up. And as you improve these cards, because from in between one dungeon dive to the next, you can upgrade these cards to their trained action. And so then that will be placed with the moon side up. So that's another way that you can build your action deck. You can make your heroes more powerful, is by upgrading your basic actions. But we have move actions, so these you will take when you want to move around the dungeon. When you want to initiate a battle, you will use a battle action. You can use a prepare action to re-roll your hero dice. And you can also take a search action in order to find loot. And the loot deck, sometimes you will add to the dungeon to find, and you will do that by either searching or by finding a treasure room. And then the loot gets added, and then you will take this search action on the loot card here, and you will roll a 3 or lower. And so, like I said before, the D4 and the D6, you know, your rogues have a better chance of finding loot. Then you will add this loot card to your deck. And when you draw this loot card, you can spend that loot in order to trigger abilities that need loot to be spent. Or you can also discard 4 cards from your hand to appraise this loot, and then the loot cards become new items that get permanently added to your deck. So you flip those over to the moon side up. And so we have different things like Potion of Speed, Potion of Strength, a Jeweler's Loop, a Potion of Invisibility, a Pocket Dimension, or a 10-foot pole. Now also mixed into your loot deck are a number of different traps, and sometimes these traps will come out, the monsters will trigger the traps, they will damage the heroes, but the heroes can also disarm those traps, and then that also becomes loot. Sometimes loot is just more powerful loot, and it will cost towards a 2 loot cost card. So let's give that a shuffle there. And then we also have these gear cards, and these gear cards are special gear that you can unlock during your campaign. These will get permanently added to your deck, and these can also be upgraded to become upgraded gear. Now, the main objective of this game is to kill the Lich. This is the boss, and I think this is another area where the game could have more variety. Right now, there's only one boss, and so from one campaign to the next, you're always going to be trying to kill this boss, this Lich boss. So having, you know, 5 other boss monsters that you could randomly draw from would go a long way in creating a lot of variety. But the Lich boss is how you want to defeat the Lich boss in order to win the entire campaign. And the Lich can come out in a variety of ways. And the main thrust of the campaign is to get your deck strong enough, to get your heroes strong enough in order to kill the Lich. And that probably takes around 5 games or so. So it's a fairly short campaign. And so if we flip these over, we can see all of the setup that we need to do in order. So the first thing we do is we prepare our village. and we will randomly draw a couple village quests. So we have the Shadow Alley and the Infested Cellar. So to complete this quest, we need to kill 4 of these types of monsters and place them there. To complete this quest, we need to defeat 4 of these types of monsters and place them there. When we do one of those, the game ends, and then that village building gets permanently added to our village deck. So I'll go ahead and put those there. And so this will be our village space. And so anytime we have dice in our village space, we can take these village actions. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to prepare our dungeon deck. And this is another area, I think this is the area for the greatest amount of improvement that could be added. Because the dungeon deck is just not very exciting. So all of the dungeon cards here, they are really just art. There aren't any special rooms to discover, and I think that is a fairly big missed opportunity, especially when you start thinking about the variety and the types of quests they could have added to the game if there were special rooms. You know, there could be a map room that maybe you have to find, or maybe a wizard's laboratory that would have you have to do something special on the card. There are really no interesting and different ways to interact with the different dungeon decks. And it makes drawing a new dungeon room not very exciting. Especially when you consider that there are other sets that you can buy. So this is a Series 2, and this is kind of a jungle temple environment. The only thing that's different from this deck to this deck is really the art. And so not having special rooms, not having special ways to interact with these dungeon cards is a missed opportunity. But these are also double-sided because as you are exploring, you might find dead ends in certain ways. And then you turn the card over to show that it is a dead end. And so when you set up your dungeon deck, you will take your 4 treasure cards and you will disperse those kind of evenly into quarters of the deck here. So we'll just kind of go like that, add those in like that, and that's good enough. You're supposed to lay out 4 stacks of cards and then shuffle them, but we'll just keep it like that. And then we also have our dungeon entrances. And all entrances and exits always lead back to the dungeon or to the village. And whenever all 4 of these entrances come out, so if you have dead ends and you have to start a new dungeon, then the lich comes out. So that's how the lich is summoned if you ever have 4 of these out. And these always lead back to the dungeon because as you're laying your dungeon cards, you're going to be creating a pathway that the monsters are going to be moving towards your dungeon or towards your village. And if they ever escape the dungeon and go to your village, then they damage your buildings. And then you flip that to the damage side up like that. And then you can no longer take the action at that particular building. But at the beginning of each game, everything is reset. So let's just take out a dungeon entrance there. We also have these secret rooms that you can discover using some special abilities and actions. And these are placed and they connect to any dungeon area in the direction that they are placed on the table. So these just allow you to kind of quickly navigate the dungeon, but these are pretty rare to discover. So we've prepared our dungeon. We've shuffled all the other decks. Let's shuffle up the monster deck there. We don't need to do anything with this. We have prepared our players. So we have just our starting deck of 10 cards. Let's give that another shuffle. And then I will draw 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You kind of always want to draw from the bottom of the card decks for this game because the cards are double-sided. So our starting hand here is a move, a battle, prepare, and a search. The one final thing we need to do is we need to roll our hero dice to determine our initial values for our heroes. Okay, so we have a 10, a 3, a 7, a 20, excellent, good combat, a 7, and a 4. So that's actually some pretty good variety. So right now, all of our heroes are in the village. Let's flip that over. We have our starting tile here for our dungeon. And now we can start playing. Now we can start exploring the dungeon. And you do actually want to find some dead ends because dead ends are where you can search for loot. Dead ends are where you can place your hero quests. And also, but you also want to keep some entrances open because the entrances are where the monsters are going to appear. And if you draw a monster and you can't place a monster at an empty entrance, then that is another way to trigger the end of the game. There are a few ways to trigger the end of the game. You either do one of your village quests and add a new building to your village. All the village buildings are damaged, monsters can't spawn, or all heroes are killed. Once that happens, the game is over. That game is over. In between games, you have an opportunity to upgrade one of your cards in your hero deck. Whether you win or lose, it kind of has a forward momentum at all times. So let's go ahead and take a turn here. We need to move some heroes into the dungeon in order to start exploring. So let's take a move action. The move action, the card has to be in your hand. It was, and then you discard it. You move one of your heroes to any room in the dungeon, or you move them to into the village space where they can do the village action, and then you discard that card. When this basic action is upgraded, you will have a trained action, and then you can move 2 of your heroes for 1 card. Very cool. Okay, let's go ahead and move in our outlaw here. So our outlaw is now there in the dungeon. We have 1 empty exit, so we need to explore, and we will draw a card from the bottom of our dungeon deck, and we will place it so the arrow, that is the pathway that the enemies are following back to the village. And so we will place that there like that. Okay, so our next turn here. We can't battle, there's no monsters to battle. We don't have any dead ends, so we can't search. We don't need to prepare. I don't need to re-roll any of my dice, so I'm going to take another move action. Now we can continue to move our outlaw, or we can move a new hero from our village into the dungeon. And let's go ahead and do that. Let's bring in a beefy boy. Let's bring in our D20, which is our Berserker. And the Berserker is on a 20 here, and we will move them here. You don't need to count cards. You can move until you need to stop. There are a couple triggers that will force you to stop. You either come to a room that has exits to explore, you come to an enemy that you can't sneak past, because each of the enemies has a sneak value, and the facing value of your die needs to be that value or lower in order to sneak past the enemy. And there are maybe a couple other things that might cause you to stop. But now our Berserker is here, and we have 3 different exits to explore. So let's do this one first. Okay, so that'll go like that. We'll do this one next. And that'll go like that. And we will do this one next like that. So in this game, it's pretty important to kind of establish a dungeon space. So if you're playing on a small table, your dungeons will probably be smaller. Let's say that, let's move these over a little. Let's move our village space over just a little bit so we can continue exploring. Let's say that we had drawn a card here that would meet back at this exit at a dead end. Then you would draw that and you would place it with its dead end side up. And so that's how you discover dead ends like that. And like I said, it is important to try to find dead ends so you can find that treasure and so you can find those special skills. So we have a prepare, a search, and a battle. We don't have any dead ends yet. So I think I will go ahead and discard these 2 cards. I will draw a new hand up to 5. So I need to draw 4 more. So for my next turn, I will have 3 moves and 2 battles. And now it's the enemy's turn. And so now I need to draw an enemy and have the enemy spawn in the dungeon. And we have drawn a mimic. So the mimic has this icon here. They get placed into any empty card that has an empty entrance or an exit there to explore. So they're coming into the dungeon. And they actually don't do anything until you draw another enemy with that matching icon. Then all of the enemies that are in the dungeon trigger and take an action. And they each have a number of actions depending on if they are in empty rooms or a room with the hero. So if this mimic were to trigger in an empty room, it would hide. Shuffle this card into the monster deck. Kill devoured hero. Because this monster has a stomach there, if it attacks a hero and the hero can't defeat it, then that gets locked into that monster's stomach. And you have to defeat that hero in order to save that hero and retrieve it from the mimic. I love that. If it is in a room with a hero, it will devour that hero, putting it into its stomach. To win this battle, I need to have 2 heroes with a 9 or higher or a 4 or higher on the card when battle is initiated. When we win this battle, we flip it over and it becomes a loot card, and then we would add that to our deck. How cool is that? That is so awesome. Let's go ahead and put that card there. Okay, so the monster doesn't trigger yet. It doesn't take an action until we draw a matching icon, and then all of those monsters trigger. So now it is the hero's turn again. So we do have 2 moves. I need a 9 or higher and a 4 or higher. I have a 20 there. I have 2 7s in the village. Let's go ahead and move my War Priest here, the D12, into that monster there. So he will stop there. I will move my Berserker into that room there. And then I will take a battle action. A battle action, you play the card and you have to discard another card. So I will discard both of my battle cards in order to initiate the battle. And now the battle is a 9 and a 4, or a 9 or higher, or a 4 or higher. I have that, so we flip that over. That becomes loot. When revealed, add this card to your hand. Okay, so now I have this loot card in my hand. And I can flip this card and return it to the loot deck to pay for 2 loot. So if I have a piece of gear, or if I have an ability in my deck that requires 2 loot to use, then I can use that card and I will add that back to the loot deck. Okay, so after a battle, all surviving party members have to re-roll their values. So now I have a 5 and a 6. So yeah, not quite as good. So they're tired. You know, they got worn out by fighting that mimic. And if I was unable to defeat the monster, then one of my heroes would die. They would go to the cemetery, and then I could take this action by discarding 3 cards or a loot card in order to resurrect that dead hero, adding them back to the village. Let's go ahead and kind of force a scenario here and say that, let's find a card here that would have a certain type of, let's say that I came across something like this here, and I was exploring and I came across this, and that was leading off the table or off of my edge. And so then that would become a dead end. And so dead ends are important because at a dead end, you can take your search action. So you would take your search action, which you would have to discard another card from your hand to draw a search card, and I just drew a pit trap there. So that would be added there. And then I can move a character in here to take the disarm action, rolling a 4 or lower in order to disarm that trap. And then I would flip that over and that would become loot that's added to my deck. Or you might find a loot card, and if you go into that room and you roll a 3 or lower, which I just rolled a 4, so I wouldn't have done that, but I could take that action again, a 3 or lower, then I could add that loot to my, my deck. And then I could take this appraise action by discarding 4 cards, flipping this, and then that would become a potion of invisibility that gets permanently added to my deck. And so that's another way for deck progression. Additionally, if I have a dead end, I can go to the town hall. And at the town hall, I can take an action by discarding 2 cards from my hand or a loot card that I might have gathered while exploring the dungeon. And then I can do a hero quest. And then I can take one of these hero decks, my choice, shuffle that up, randomly draw 1. And then this is a quest that I can add there. So this is the Outlaw quest, which would be my D4. If my Outlaw was in the same room with this quest, I could add it to my tableau, and then this becomes an ongoing quest. And once a card is in your tableau, it never gets added back to the decks unless the game tells you to. So once you have unlocked the ability to complete this quest, it stays with that player. And so they will have more opportunities than just one game to complete this quest. And so to complete this quest, I can discard loot and monsters, so 3 of either one of those to complete this quest. And then I could flip that over, and then that becomes a new action. So this action, place your Outlaw on the village square and draw a card from your deck. So that way you're your outlaw goes back and devises a plan. And so that allows you to continue to draw cards into your hand. That is super cool. And each one of these quests, each one of these hero quests is a different action that you get to add to your deck as you complete them. I think this game is really, really cool. There is so much going on in such a little small box. I mean, this is smaller than a Stephen King paperback novel. And yeah, it's fantastic. I wasn't expecting anything approaching, what this game delivered. I was expecting an okay game. I was kind of getting it for the art. I was kind of getting it for the dungeon morph cards. I thought they might be useful for some solo RPGs or something. But it has completely won me over. It has completely wowed me. And I just love what it does. I love how much it packs in. I like that you have to manage the monsters so they don't destroy your buildings. I love all the various quests that you can go on and how those are used to unlock new abilities that you get to add to your deck. I like the way all of the various monsters work. I love building this village and unlocking new abilities from one game to the next. I like that the campaign is short. It's only about 5 or 6 games. And it's very easy to set up. It's very easy to play. I think it looks great. The art is amazing. The game was completely designed by, I don't know if it's one guy or one group of people, but it's Roland Kuhns. Game design, illustration, graphic design, and writing. And the rulebook editor was Sean F. Smith. But this game packs a huge, huge punch into a small box. And I think with one little deck of expansion cards, this game could be elevated to an all-time small box dungeon crawl classic. And I'm really hoping that Dungenerator, it's kind of a weird word to say, Dungenerator Die in a Dungeon. I really hope that this is just the beginning for this game. A brilliant foundation. Just nothing, there's nowhere to go but up for this game, and I'm hoping that it has a future because I would absolutely love to see more. I'm very, very excited. One of the best games I've played this year. I am so happy I took the chance on backing it. It was affordable, and I am super, super happy with Die in a Dungeon. All right, I hope you enjoyed this look at Die in the Dungeon. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.